Today I'm going to get started on the beginner Leathercraft series. We're going to make this. It's just a single pocket wallet. I like to use them. I keep business cards in it. This one has just a bunch of my business cards. I've got these things all over the place. I got a couple in the house. A couple my wife carries one with business cards in it and all kinds of stuff. I mean, I keep these around. They're quick and easy to make, relatively quick. This will take me about an hour and 20 minutes. That includes cutting out the pattern and everything else that I'm doing here. So it's faster if you're not talking to a camera and having to start everything up from scratch. So I'm not going to do it in real time because some of this stuff like stitching takes me, 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops. But excuse me. If you want a stitching video, drop a comment down below. I can do another stitching video. If you want burnishing videos, drop a comment. Let me know in the comments what else you want to see. If there's another project that you want to see that I maybe haven't thought of, let me know. Well, this is what we're going to make. This is the pattern. There'll be a link down below to the pattern. And it's free. That's all I can say about it. Ain't much more to say. Anyway, let's get after it. I'll get you done on the bench here. Alright, I got some leather. I tried this with a different piece of leather. It just didn't work out real well. I was having problems with it. This doesn't have a top coat. So I will top coat this differently or not. Sometimes I just don't top coat them. But I'm going to go ahead and set this up here. Grab this is a fabric marking pen. In case I didn't mention it, this is a drum dyed veg tan, so it was dyed during the tanning process. The back is fairly well finished. It's actually really nice leather. It's just not top coated, so it's not shiny, which is fine. It's kind of a utility leather. I use works really well for prototyping. Whenever I'm prototyping, I don't know, whatever I'm prototyping, usually wallets and such. So I'll just get it cut out here. So the way I get this, if you're trying to design your own, the way I come up with this is I come down 3/4 of an inch from the top edge. I come down 3/4 and I come back. It's just, how far did I go back? So this project is 5 5/8. So I'll come in, how far did I go? 2 inches usually, little off a half. About 2.5 inches. So I'm just a little short of halfway. And it usually works out pretty well. Alright, done with the pattern. Cut this curve up here. Just like with the pattern, it's oftentimes easier to make smaller cuts. Unless you're really good at freehanding. Sometimes I'll freehand those. I need to Sand that a little bit, just a little rough. So we're going to sand it. Just wet and dry, 220 grit is what I usually use. I've tried other sandpapers. 3M works the best for me. The 3M wet and dry. It doesn't plug up when you go for like a second or third sanding. Oops, I forgot to cut this line. Sometimes I get a little off. Well, when I consider that, you know, I had 2 of these cut out of some natural veg tan, and it was just a little too fleshy, and it doesn't burnish well, it doesn't cut well. This will be much better. So I want to bevel all this. I need to have a mark to bevel to. So I made a mark right, come on, where am I? Right where that edge comes. I don't want to ever glue past there, and as I am beveling, I don't want to go past that either on the inside. So this is your craft tool number 0, Craft Tool Pro number 0. I'm not going to talk a lot about these. That's what I'm using on this particular project. I think it's a good beveler, and the learning curve isn't as steep as it is with some other ones. A lot of times they'll come both ways. Just because sometimes leather has kind of a way that it lays, and sometimes you just don't always get it right. I'm going to start from my mark. So beveler, when you're holding it, you want to hold it at about a 45-degree angle. So they seem to work the best. About a 45 degrees this way, and roll it 45. Since you're, you know, doing an edge. Flip it over. Now when you're doing the face of the leather, oh, I don't know, the skin side, I guess a lot of people call it. Then, don't know what I'm saying. When you're doing the skin side, the beveler will work a little easier. On the front side, it doesn't matter how far I bevel down. That's this edge all beveled. Now this piece, I can still get some straps out of this for like a notebook or something, so I don't get rid of those. I'm going to water burnish this after I give it just a little sand. I'm only going to go in one direction with my sandpaper now. I don't want to spend all day burnishing this thing. On a holster, I might go and burnish it 4 or 5 times. So I'm using a 220 grit, 3M wet and dry. That's not bad there. I might see if I can find a little finer grit. Some 320, that'll work. Just not as smooth as I'd like to see it. That's better. Much better. So I'm going to put some water on my bench here. I got a habit of doing stuff kind of weird. I'm just going to use my finger to apply it. The water will not affect any of my finishes that I want to use or anything. And then you'll take a piece of canvas. This is just like artist canvas. This is a well-used piece. It is normally white. I hate breaking in new canvas. I probably should just do it. So there's my burnished edge. It looks really nice. Not perfect, but it looks nice. Hopefully you can see that in the camera. Now all there is to it is glue it up. So this side I'll glue all the way to the top and off the edge, because that way it's going to stick down better at the edge. So when I go to finish it, it'll just look nice. That's all. It'll look nice. Now all I need to do is glue and fold. This leather is a little stiff, so I'm going to add a little water down here with the veg tan. It helps to make it a little more pliable. And it won't affect my glue. Might as well stamp it with my logo. Heavier. Just don't like the way that stamps. I mean, it does okay. I usually put it on my press too, by the way, so that's helpful. So there we go. Have my logo, made in USA. So now with that wet, it folds over nicer, much nicer. You can use two-sided tape. Now, two-sided tape is something I use a lot in bag making. For stuff like this, I just grab my glue. This is all I use for glue. It's the original formula, Weldwood contact cement. And it works very well. Some people don't think it does. That's okay. They don't have to. More for me. So I'm just going to glue up. I'm probably a 1/4 of an inch. It's a little more than I need, of course, but there's that. That's all the glue it takes. That can set for a minute. Move some of my crap around. Tokonol is another thing that you can use for a burnishing agent. I'm not going to on this because water is just as easy. On a good veg tan, water is the way to go. Sometimes, if I'm doing something like this, a holster, now this is my daily carry. I've been carrying this holster for 5 years. 6 years. But that's what the edge looks like. I use dye. Oh, there we go. Dye and water, and that's all I burnish that with. So, and like I said, it's been like 6 years now. I carry my 45 Shield in here. I haven't carried this for a couple months. Pretty dusty. I rotate around a little bit. I don't rotate guns much. So, but I've been trying out a new revolver holster. So, anyway, if you have any questions, I know I get a little scatterbrained here because I've got so much going on in the shop, and sometimes my head just don't quite work the way it should. Please drop a comment below. I will be happy to explain anything or do a video on it if I get more than one person asking about it. So I'm going to go up the side, and I don't know why. It doesn't matter where you stick first. But pretty much once you're stuck, you're stuck. I don't let it dry completely. So I'm going to kind of flatten this down. I'm not going to hammer it or anything, but I'm just going to kind of flatten it. Just because I wet it down, anytime you don't need to make a bend that sharp a bend, just get it wet. It doesn't take long to dry. It won't hurt your finish. Just get her wet and move her like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut my corner. There are other cutting tools you can use other than this. Boy, it's hard to say no to these little snap knives. They're just so convenient. I'm going to cut this corner down here off too. Just because it'll make it more comfortable to carry. So I'm going to go ahead and sand And there's that. I'm going to go ahead and bevel this before I mark it. Well, it beveled really nice. I did leave a little mark there from my washer. Should have let it dry. Trying to hurry. Ruler out of my way. And again, it's best to leave the final burnishing until it's all done. What happens is when you run your stitch holes and pull your thread through, it'll leave a little waviness to this edge that you can sand out, so it's not a problem. This is set at just a tick over 1/8 of an inch, and that's where I like to run my stitch lines at. So while it's not a necessary piece of equipment, it does make marking your stitch lines easier. So there you can see I have a nice clear stitch line to follow. These are some stitching chisels that I picked up just for this project. I've got a set here that hangs right on the side of my bench that I use all the stinking time. The only difference is these are black. So that'll leave them. I did take a few minutes with my rotary tool to polish this. To polish the teeth a little bit. It just helps. A lot of these kind of Leathercraft tools, it helps just to have a nice polished edge on them. They just seem to work so much better. So let me get my cutting mat out of the way. And I'll grab my punching mat. This is just a poundo board. I picked it up at Tandy. It's not a necessity. A lot of people prefer to punch into a cutting board, which I like cutting into a cutting board, but at the same time, this isn't loud. So if you're one of those folks doing it at your kitchen table, this might be the way to go. So I'm going to punch these and then I'll tell you about them. When I'm punching, I'm looking at the tines. Every now, well, I've seen more often than not. If you look this way at a stitching chisel, the tines will be a little lean one direction, more so than the handle. So if you're going off the handle, I had a set of irons that were so bad that when I hit and I lined up the handle, eyeballed that handle straight, when I'd hit it, the teeth would come out the side of a thicker piece, the double 8 to 9. It would come right out at the edge and it was unusable that way. So ever since that, I just look at the tines, line them up, get them up perpendicular, up and down, get them straight. Now I punched 3 holes, or punched 4. The one comes up off the edge here. That's where I'm going to do a binding stitch. So what that'll do is it'll just hold this edge down good. So let me get the rest of these holes punched. And it's just, I'm putting my tines right on that line that I made. Eyeball it as best I can to be in straight. You want to make sure that you're coming through all the way, because this is a stitching chisel as opposed to a pricking iron. Pricking iron would be different. They are to mark holes that you later use an awl to make. So now I've got to come around this corner, and it's going to be really hard to do with the 4-tined stitching chisel. So this is a kit, and it comes with 6, 4, 2, and 1 tooth chisels. So I can take my 2 tooth. If I go this way, I can make a mark as to where that next tooth is going to be, and then I can hit that tooth or put 1 tooth in there and just move into it and make my holes. I can go back to the 4-tine there. I'll go back to the 2-tine. Right, so I've got all my holes punched. They all come through the back. They're not perfect. They never are. I need to pick a thread to use to stitch this up. I could use a black because I have black thread all over the place. I'm not gonna. Most of the time I'll recommend a braided nylon. I think I don't want to use braided nylon today. I'm going to use a linen thread. The needles I'm going to use are John James Saddler's harness needles. These are a 004 to match the leather or the thread that I'm using. And yeah. Well, you know what? This might be a nice color. A gray. I think that'll look pretty good. In the end, there it is. And this is a 3-cord linen thread. I use this kind of stuff on holster repairs all the time. But today we're going to do it on here. A little at the very end of it, it's a brand new spool, so the very end seems to get funny. The rule of thumb is 4 times the length that you need to stitch. So there's 1, there's 2, and that would be 4. I always leave myself a little extra because it just seems like the right thing to do. I always tie my needles together because I lose them all the time. I took a break and I got up and sat back down and found a needle on the floor. So at least I know where they're going. The eye is a little plugged. It happens. There. Now, usually I can take a fingernail and flatten that out enough to get through the eye. The eye of these needles is pretty small, which is why I use the 004. I mark on them 6 to 8 millimeter, or 0.6 to 0.8. The this is a 020, no, this is a 3 cord. So it's probably, I don't know, close to that 0.6 millimeter. If I'm trying to make a guess. Come on, get through there. So a lot of times I'll go through, if I'm using, especially with a braided nylon, I'll come back through and poke my needle through and do it that way. Well, I can do a whole stitching video, and that's probably the best way if you want to know more about the stitching. For right now, we're just doing a quick little project here. So I punched through on this side, which leaves kind of a funnel shape to the hole. And I want to use that to my advantage because it'll make putting my needle in there a lot easier. And I'll bring both, I start at one hole down, so I started in this hole and came up around to the top hole, and that's what binds down that edge. That's just the best way I've found to do it. Now the nice thing about linen thread is you don't really notice it when you double up, or at least in the smaller stuff anyway. And you don't have to pull real hard, because, you know, most things you don't have to. So I'm at the very end, and with a linen thread as opposed to a nylon thread you could just clip it close, melt the end, you're done. With the linen thread you can't melt that end. So I'll usually backstitch probably at least 2, probably 3. And as long as you're keeping good tension, not super hard pulling on it, but keeping good tension, everything's going to be okay. Haven't had one of these come apart yet. But I do want to cut close. So I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to lay it right down. And I know you probably can't see this. I'm not going to move my blade, but I'm laying it right up against the thread. I'm not moving it. I'll move the thread. And this is just because with the linen thread you can't melt the ends. But at the same time, you can kind of tell where I ended, and that's all there is to it. There is not much else that you can do there. I'm just going to tie my needles together before I lose them. Alright, we're just about done. We can take and do a little sanding here. It feels pretty good. Now sometimes if it's rough enough, you can go over it a second or third time too. Not the end of the world. There's a couple spots in there that I don't like. There's a spot kind of right there. And down on the bottom here. It didn't burnish quite the way I had hoped. So what I'm going to do is sand it down with some 320. This is some cheap sandpaper that is absolutely horrible. So I'm trying to use it, but it plugs up. You can see the color on there. So I like the way that's looking now. Feels nice. Very nice. Very, very nice. A little more water. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Now I can sit here and sand this 3 or 4 more times, but I'm going to say that it's looking pretty good. I talked before, well I talked in my, I do have a burnishing video too, on finding an acceptable edge. You don't have to get that glassy edge every single time you burnish. It's nice and it looks pretty, but that edge, especially on something like a wallet, that's going to be going in and out of pockets all the time. So evaluate for yourself what's going to be acceptable. I can get away with a little worse edge on something like this. I mean, it's fine. It's still a nice edge. Don't get me wrong. It's not ugly, and you don't even have to burnish if you don't want to. If that's your gig, that's your gig. I see a lot of projects out there being sold for, you know, pretty good money that they don't burnish, they don't edge paint, they don't do anything on them. And I think that's not cool. I think you need to do something. It kind of seals that edge too. So I think this looks fine. I'm going to take this bone folder and go along the stitch line here, because remember I glued in about 1/4 of an inch, so it's going to be a little beyond there. And if I can get my space and internal space back just by, you know, running around and breaking that extra glue free, we're good to go. So it's perfect. Well, it's a good size. It's a little long for cards, I guess, but you can certainly shorten it. I usually use these for business cards, and I like to carry, you know, there's 10 or 12 here, so I like those to fit down in there nice, so I'm not beating up the edges, the corners of my cards. There you go, folks. I think the gray thread really looks good on there. This is a pretty quick project to make. It's not terrible. There's a link to the pattern down in the description. There's links, affiliate links, so I get a little kick off it. A penny or two. But there'll be affiliate links down below for all the tools that I've used on this project. I even kept a little list so I know what to make sure I get in there. Yeah. So check all that out. Y'all stay safe. God bless. And I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.